Reality feels solid, stable, predictable. But physics suggests something disturbing. Reality may not be fixed at all, and if it changes, you wouldn't feel it happening. You wake up every morning assuming the world will still be there, the same laws, the same constants, the same rules holding everything together. We build our lives on that assumption. We treat it as background, as guaranteed. But in physics, guaranteed is a word you earn, not a word you assume. Stability can be temporary. It can be local. It can be a fragile arrangement that only looks permanent because you've never watched it fail. Here's the first idea to swallow. What you call reality might be a phase, not a foundation. We already accept phases in daily life. Water becomes ice. Ice becomes vapor. The substance doesn't vanish. The behavior changes. Same molecules, different rules. Now take that logic and scale it up. In modern physics, the vacuum is not empty. It's a state, a structured condition with properties, energy, and fields. And like any state, it can have more than one configuration. Some configurations are stable. Others are metastable. They persist for a long time, but they are not the deepest, most stable option available. They survive until something triggers a transition, a threshold, a rare event, a push. And once it happens, the system doesn't politely warn you. It just becomes different. That's what reality can change without warning really means. Not that chairs will suddenly melt or the sky will flip upside down. It means the underlying rules that make chairs and skies possible are not necessarily locked forever. Imagine you were standing on a platform that feels like solid ground. You can run on it, build on it, sleep on it. But beneath the surface is a mechanism balancing hundreds of variables. As long as every variable stays within a narrow range, the platform feels stable. But it was never ground in the absolute sense. It was a maintained condition. Now ask yourself, what are the variables that maintain our universe? Start with the constants. Gravity's strength, the electron's charge, the masses of particles, the rates that determine how stars ignite and how atoms hold together. Physics can measure these constants with astonishing precision, but it cannot explain why they have these specific values. They are inputs to the machine, not outputs of an explanation. And that should bother you, because if the constants are not logically required, then they are contingent. And if they are contingent, then they could, in principle, be different. Even worse, in some theories, they could drift, or vary across regions, or emerge from deeper dynamics. Your entire life is built on a set of numbers you never see and never chose, numbers that the universe never promised to keep. But surely, you might think, if they changed, we would notice. That's the second idea you have to swallow. If the foundations shift, your perception shifts with them. You do not experience reality directly. You experience a model generated by a brain. The brain is not a window, it's an interface. It takes sensory data and constructs a usable world. Stable objects, continuous time, consistent identity. Your experience is the output of a processing system that evolved for survival, not for truth. If the underlying physics changed in a way that altered the structure of perception itself, you might not feel a discontinuity. The interface would update. The new rules would become the new normal. You would call them how things have always been. And the most terrifying part is this. You would be right from inside the updated system. Think about memory. Your memories feel like records, but they are reconstructions. They are rewritten every time you recall them. They are shaped by what your brain expects to be true. If reality's rules changed, the mechanisms that store and retrieve memory would change too. You would not have a clean before and after comparison. You would have continuity. That's what without warning can mean. Not that nothing changes, but that no internal alarm exists for changes at the level of the rules. In physics, there's a concept that captures this unsettling possibility: vacuum stability. The vacuum state, the baseline condition of fields, might be stable, or it might be metastable. If it is metastable, then it is like a ball resting in a shallow valley. It can sit there for a very long time. It can look permanent. But the deeper valley exists nearby, separated by a barrier. A rare quantum event can allow the ball to tunnel through that barrier, dropping into a lower energy state. The system doesn't slide there gradually. It transitions. If that transition happened to the vacuum of our universe, the laws and constants could change. not slightly, fundamentally, the kinds of particles that exist, the forces that bind matter, the ability of atoms to form. Everything you call structure depends on those rules. It's not a disaster you survive. It's a redefinition of what survival even means. And you might be tempted to say, okay, but if that's possible, why hasn't it happened already? That question is a trap, because already assumes time as a stable stage. Already assumes probability as something you can intuit. Quantum tunneling doesn't care about your intuition. A metastable state can last longer than the current age of the universe, and still not be guaranteed. The absence of failure so far is not proof of safety. It is simply history. The universe's past does not sign a contract for its future. Here's another angle. Reality might have changed before. In the early universe, it almost certainly did. Physics describes symmetry breaking, moments when the universe cooled and transitioned into new phases, splitting forces apart, changing the behavior of fields, determining which particles gained mass, defining the structures that would later become galaxies and life. In other words, the universe you live in is the aftermath of ancient phase transitions. You are already living in a version of reality, not in an eternal default. The fact that you are here means this phase supports complexity. It does not mean this phase is final. Now, ask, could there be future phase transitions? Could there be thresholds we are slowly approaching without noticing? Some cosmological models discuss evolving dark energy, shifting vacuum states, or conditions that could alter the long-term fate of spacetime. Many of these ideas are speculative, but the deeper point is not the prediction. It's the principle. Physics does not forbid reality from changing. It only tells you what happens if it does. And that's enough to shake the assumption of permanence. But maybe change doesn't need to be cosmic. Maybe it can be local. Consider how we define real. We define it through regularities. Objects persist. Causes produce effects. The same experiment yields the same result. If those regularities depend on deeper conditions, then the real is an emergent pattern. An emergent pattern can shift when the conditions shift. This is why the idea is so difficult to emotionally accept. Because your mind treats reality as a container, physics treats it as a behavior, a pattern that holds as long as constraints hold. If the constraints are not absolute, neither is the pattern. So, what would it feel like if reality changed? Not like a movie glitch, not like a dramatic collapse. It might feel like nothing at all. You would still wake up, still look at your hands, still believe you are the same person. But the background assumptions that make those experiences possible might be subtly different. The same would be defined by the new rules, and you would never get access to the old rules to compare. That is the most unsettling consequence. You cannot step outside the interface to verify continuity. You can only trust the interface, and the interface is built to preserve the feeling of continuity because discontinuity is useless for survival. Here's where the title becomes personal. Reality can change without warning because the warning system is inside reality. It cannot warn you about the rules that make it possible. A map cannot warn you that the concept of mapping has changed. A measurement cannot tell you that measurement itself has been redefined. This is why these ideas don't sit comfortably in the mind. They attack the assumption that there is a stable foundation beneath experience. They suggest the foundation might be conditional, metastable, or even unknown. And you might ask, so what do I do with that? Not panic, not worship the idea, not turn it into mysticism. You do what physics forces you to do. You separate what you feel from what is logically required. The universe does not owe you stability. It only gives you patterns until it doesn't. And the fact that we can even ask these questions tells you something else. Our confidence in reality is not based on proof. It is based on habit. Every day you wake up, and the rules hold, so you assume they will hold tomorrow. But that is a psychological inference, not a physical law. If reality is a phase, then existence is a temporary agreement between conditions you don't control. You are living inside a balance you cannot see. And if that balance ever shifts, you won't get a countdown. You won't get a siren. You might not even get the feeling that anything changed. Reality won't collapse. It will simply become the only reality you've ever known. This is Veritas Labs, where truth is tested,